Hello, and welcome to the Full Circle Podcast, your source for insights into the science and art of endurance sports training and racing. I'm your host, Coach Laura Henry. Today is Coach Tip Tuesday. How much does it cost to train for an Ironman? An Ironman is a full-distance triathlon, which is a total of 140.6 miles long, and it consists of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and a 26.2-mile run. While all Ironman races are full-distance triathlons, not all full-distance triathlons are Ironmans. An Ironman is a brand name for this distance of triathlon put on by a company called the Ironman Group. The Ironman Group owns the largest number of full-distance triathlons in the world, which is why so many people colloquially refer to this distance as Ironman, whether the race is actually a name brand Ironman or not. Most endurance athletes are aware that triathlon is not the most inexpensive endurance sport to get into. That being said, I've seen athletes be shocked time and time again over the years by just how much it actually costs to train for an Ironman. The truth of the matter is this. I truly do believe that anyone can become an Ironman. But the reality is that some athletes might find that the costs associated with training for and racing an Ironman is too steep for them. While there are many factors that do influence the total final cost of training for an Ironman for each individual athlete, there is a base amount that each athlete can and should expect to spend if they set a goal to do an Ironman. It's important to note that while a lot of Ironman training plans are written for 26 weeks or 6 months, it actually takes at least, and I mean at least, 12 months of training to properly prepare for the demands of an Ironman. In reality, it actually takes many years, but it can be done in 12 months. Because of that, for the purposes of this episode, I'm basing all calculations that I'm running on a year's worth of training for an Ironman. This week's Coach Tip Tuesday is the third in a series of episodes that are an effort to provide athletes with an accurate range of what they can expect to spend if they train for one of the four most common long course endurance events: a marathon, a half marathon, an Ironman, or an Ironman 70.3. This week, we are focusing on Ironman. All prices that I reference in this episode are current as of the time that I'm recording it, which is in August of 2024. In my experience, the swim is the hardest leg of a triathlon to train for, and there are a few reasons for that. A lot of triathletes are adult onset swimmers, meaning that they never quote-unquote really swam, meaning more than learning how to swim to save their life, until they were an adult. Additionally, gaining access to a place to train for the swim can be really tricky. Getting access to a pool to train in can be really challenging, especially for athletes who live in rural or remote areas. Pool access almost always costs money, and almost all athletes will have to commit to traveling to a pool to complete this portion of training. And this makes the swim different from biking and running, because biking and running can be done by most athletes from home if needed or desired. But with the swim, there's just a lot of extra logistics, so it makes it really tricky. And the costs of pool access can vary widely. Access is usually given one of two ways: through a monthly membership or through a fee per use. Most athletes that I've coached over the years have had monthly memberships at gyms or facilities that have pools. The current average monthly cost for pool access is around $50. There are a few pieces of gear that are either required or that are really useful for swim training: a bathing suit, a swim cap, goggles, a wetsuit, and a swim safety buoy. A bathing suit is technically the only piece of required gear here, but the other things do make training for an Ironman a lot easier, and it does make it feel better. For the purposes of swim training, any bathing suit that you're comfortable in would do. That being said, I have found that bathing suits designed for training, made by companies such as Speedo or Tier, withstand the rigors of training and the chemicals used in pools better than bathing suits that are designed for recreational use, such as those that you might find at Walmart or Target. The average price of a bathing suit is about $60, and one bathing suit will last an entire Ironman training cycle in most circumstances, again, about a year. And the reality here is that the chemicals do break down the stretchiness of bathing suits. They do wear out after a certain amount of time, but generally speaking, about a year is accurate. A swim cap is a really great piece of gear for athletes who don't have shaved heads or super short hair. The cap protects the hair from the harsh chemicals in a pool, and it also helps to keep hair from getting tangled, which can be a real pain. In open water environments, a bright swim cap makes a swimmer more visible to boaters and others in the water, and the average price for a swim cap is $15. Goggles really enhance an athlete's experience when they're swimming in water. Not technically necessary, but definitely very, very, very nice to have. Like bathing suits, there are goggles out there that are designed designed for recreation that are relatively cheap, but I found that goggles designed for competitive swimming are the best choice for athletes training for Ironman races, and the average price for a pair of goggles like this is around $25. While I definitely don't think it's absolutely necessary for all athletes to wear a wetsuit in open water or in a triathlon, the warmth and the buoyancy properties of a wetsuit often do make the 2.4-mile swim of an Ironman feel better for athletes who are doing it. Prices of wetsuits designed for triathlon training and racing range from $300 to $1,000, but the average cost that most people spend is about $400. For athletes who train in open water, a swim safety buoy is a must. These aren't allowed on race day, but in training, they're a must. These buoys help swimmers be more visible to boaters and others who may be in the water at the same time as the athlete. Additionally, they can be used as a flotation device mid-swim, which can be comforting if an athlete experiences anxiety in open water. Additionally, these buoys often have a pouch that athletes can store things in, such as car keys or an extra pair of goggles, so that they don't need to abandon something important like that on the shore. The average cost of a swim safety buoy is $40. The bike leg of a triathlon is by far, the most expensive leg to train for, since it requires the purchase of several pieces of gear, and most notably, the bicycle itself. The bicycle is one of the largest single costs for triathletes, no matter which distance they are racing. And while technically any bike will do in a triathlon, the reality is for Ironman, having a road bike or a triathlon bike is going to make training for and doing this distance of race easier. I don't think that triathlon bikes are necessary to do an Ironman, and that's an unpopular opinion. Since triathletes are notoriously gearheads, a lot of people will disagree with me very vehemently about this, but the reality is, folks, triathlon bikes are not necessary to do triathlons. Road bikes will do. And in the case of Ironman, I do think that at least a road bike is necessary to do an Ironman. I've seen athletes who are trying to do it on fat bikes or mountain bikes. It's just really challenging because Ironman races have very strict time limits, and a heavy mountain bike or a hybrid bike is just going to increase the risk that an athlete won't make the bike course time cutoffs. And that's not something that you want to risk after you've invested so much time, energy, and money into training for an Ironman. Pricing for road bikes varies widely based on the materials that they're made out of, what their components are, and a lot of other factors. A new bike can cost as little as $1,000 and as much as $15,000. The average price that most Ironman athletes will spend on a bike is currently about $3,000. So that's the number that I'm using for the purposes of these calculations here. There are a number of bicycle accessories that are necessary to train for an Ironman. First and foremost, a helmet is required in all triathlon races, not optional. You'll get disqualified if you don't have one. It should also be worn every single time you ride a bike outside, or when you're riding it off the trainer, like if you happen to be riding on an indoor track or something. All helmets sold in the United States have the same protection factor, which means that a more expensive helmet is not a safer helmet. A $60 helmet will protect your head the same as a $300 helmet will. Any variance in price among helmets is due to the materials that the helmet itself is constructed out of, how well it is ventilated, how aerodynamic it is, and a few other features. Prices range from $60 to $300, but the average price of a helmet is about $100. A bike pump, preferably a floor pump, one you place on the floor and stand on in order to pump up the tires, is a must in order to make sure that your tires are at a proper air pressure. Road or triathlon bike tires will lose their pressure within a day or two, and that's because there's high tire pressure in these bikes, over 90 PSI or pounds per square inch. So checking the tire pressure before each ride is a really good practice. Even if you just rode the bike 2 days ago, it's likely that the tires will be down by 10 to 15 PSI since then. The average price of a bike pump is about $40. If you ride outside, you will get a flat tire. Not might, you will. It may take a long time to happen to you, but it will happen. You will not be the exception to this, I promise. And when this does happen, you need to be able to change that flat tire where it happens on the road so you can get back to riding and so you're not stranded. Spare inner tubes, CO2 or carbon dioxide cartridges, and a hand pump are good supplies to carry with you while you're riding for when, not if, when this happens. The total cost of one round of these supplies is about $60, and obviously if you do get a flat, then you will need to replace those supplies so that you always have those available. Over the course of an Ironman training cycle, your bicycle will undoubtedly require maintenance. It is a machine. It does break down. It will require maintenance. If you're lucky, it'll be minor maintenance, such as a tune-up, where the mechanics at the bike shop go through the bike and just make sure it's safe and check to see what the wear on the components is. But due to the amount of miles that are covered on a bicycle in Ironman training, it usually averages out to at least 3,000 miles in a year. It's more likely that you'll have to replace parts as they wear out. I recommend budgeting at least $300 a year for repairs and maintenance to your bicycle if you're training for an Ironman. A bike fit is appropriate for anyone who rides a bicycle, but it's very necessary for athletes who are training for an Ironman due to how much time athletes spend on the bike in training for this distance of race. The purpose of a bike fit is to make a person as comfortable and efficient as possible on a bicycle. A bike fitter takes body measurements of an athlete, observes the athlete riding on the bike, and then makes adjustments to the bike to help make the rider as comfortable as possible. A comfortable athlete is going to be able to maximize their fitness and get the most out of their fitness, meaning to go as fast as possible for them based on their current fitness level. All athletes who train for triathlons or cycling events should get a bike fit at least once a year because you change over time. Your mechanics change, your body changes, how you interact with the bicycle changes. If you have a weight gain or loss of plus or minus 10 pounds, you should be getting a bike fit. And the average price of a bike fit is about $200, depending on where you live. So you can expect to spend about $200 on that. A lot of athletes, especially when they are new to the sport, don't realize that there are cycling specific shoes. I was one of these people when I was new to the sport. And I remember seeing cycling shoes for the first time when I started training for triathlons. And I remember thinking that they looked so goofy and that I would never wear them because of how they looked. Boy, was I wrong. Yes, it is possible to ride a bike with flat pedals and regular shoes or sneakers. However, I've definitely seen that riding with shoes specifically designed for cycling is best for athletes who are doing long course events such as an Ironman. Too many athletes cheap out on cycling shoes because they don't realize how significant and important they are. The main point of consideration for a lot of athletes is price, and they'll pick any shoe just because it's on sale or because it's cheap and because they don't honestly know the differences in cycling shoes or what makes a cycling shoe valuable. There's a lot of talk out there about why running shoes are so important and so valuable, but the conversation is not is great about cycling shoes. So that being said, there are important features that athletes should consider when buying cycling shoes. Cycling shoes themselves represent one of the three contact points that an athlete has with the bicycle itself. The other two are the hands or the arms and the butt. The interface between your foot and the pedal of the bicycle determines how powerfully and fast you can move that bicycle, which means that shoes are critically important for getting you to transfer as much power and energy as possible from your legs into the bicycle itself to propel it forward. Cycling shoes are stiffer than normal shoes or sneakers. Stiffer is better in cycling because we want to reduce how much the foot is flexing or bending around the pedal. Less flexion here in the foot means that there is a better power transfer from your body to the bicycle. Additionally, too much flexing, which is what happens when you wear sneakers or running shoes to ride a bike, can cause the foot's muscles to become fatigued and can cause numbness or cramping. And for triathletes, this is particularly notable because you do need to run off the bike. So you want to delay fatigue as long as possible. And that's the name of the game in Ironman, is reducing fatigue as long as possible so that you can go as long as possible. The longer the ride, the more likely this fatigue and this numbness and cramping is going to be occurring. The stiffness index of a shoe does impact its price. So the stiffer the shoe is, the more expensive it will be. Cycling shoes range in price from $120 to $450, but the average price is around $300. While this likely seems very expensive to athletes, especially compared with the cost of a single pair of running shoes, it's important to consider that cycling shoes last far longer than other types of footwear. It's not unusual for cycling shoes to last 8,000 to 10,000 miles if they're well cared for. As such, I think it is absolutely worth spending the money on a good pair of cycling shoes that fits and functions well. The return on investment per mile for the time you'll be using them is actually excellent for their lifespan when you actually break it down like that. Alongside cycling shoes, I recommend that athletes training for Ironman ride with clipless pedals. And clipless pedals are pedals where the shoe and the pedal are connected together. So you're not able to pick your foot off the pedal as easily because it's actually interfacing with the pedal itself. There are several various styles of these types of pedals. Look Keo, SPD, SPDSL, and Speedplay are the most common right now. There are many reasons why clipless pedals are a great choice for Ironman athletes, but one of the main reasons is that they help keep the foot locked into the optimal position for pedaling with the metatarsal heads of the foot, the long bones of the foot, bisecting the pedal spindle itself. Contrary to popular opinion, the ability to pull up on the pedals is not a reason why clipless pedals are advantageous. And if you want to learn more about that, go back and listen to the episode on why you should not pull up on your cycling pedals. Clipless pedals range widely in pricing, starting at around $70 for basic pedals and going all the way up to $1,200 for clipless pedals that have an integrated power meter. That being said, the average amount of money that most athletes will spend on clipless pedals is around $100. While it is possible to ride a bike with any clothes, you will be significantly more comfortable if you wear clothing designed specifically for cycling when you ride a bicycle. Cycling-specific clothing is made from technical, moisture-wicking fabrics that are designed to keep you cool, reduce friction, and be functional while you're riding. Cycling jerseys contain pockets where you can store tools, fuel, and more. Cycling shorts contain a chamois, which is a padded insert that is sewn into the shorts themselves. It goes right under your butt and through the genital area. It helps protect that area. In addition to keeping seams in a more optimal location, aka not in contact with the saddle itself, the chamois provides a cushion barrier between the bones that you're resting on the saddle, and this increases your comfort. Depending on the season and where you live, you may benefit from additional clothing items such as gloves, long sleeve jerseys, cycling jackets, and full-length cycling tights. The average price of common cycling clothing items is as follows. A cycling jersey is about $110. Cycling shorts are $90. Cycling socks, about $17. A sports bra, $65. Cycling gloves, $35. A cycling jacket, $150. No matter where you live, if you're training for an Ironman, you will likely benefit from having an indoor cycling trainer. An indoor cycling trainer allows you to ride your own bicycle indoors, and this can be advantageous in seasons when the weather does not allow outside riding, such as winter when it's snowing in some regions. It can also be a benefit to athletes who need to do their workouts at times of day when it's dark and not safe to be outside. A lot of athletes make the mistake of thinking that any indoor stationary bike or spin bike, especially the Peloton bike, is sufficient when athletes need to train indoors for cycling. This is not true. This is an unpopular opinion. No one likes to hear it who believes this, but it's true. It's not true that these are a sufficient replacement for riding your own bicycle. Indoor stationary bikes, spin bikes, and Peloton bikes are not the same bike that you will be riding in your Ironman, so they lack that specificity. And that's important because it is so crucial that you ride the position that you'll be riding in the race itself. You need to train your body to sustain that position. Your muscles need to adapt to that. There are so many different things about a Peloton bike, an indoor stationary bike, or a spin bike. The stance width, which is how far apart your pedals are, how you're interacting with that bike, meaning your shoes aren't exactly the same, how you're riding it, your fueling and hydration storage is not the same. If you are going to do long course triathlons, you need to ride your own bike. And so if you need to train indoors, you must get an indoor cycling trainer and use that. Athletes who have disregarded my advice on this, and there have been many who have, because all athletes are free to make their own choices. My job is to provide information so that they can make informed choices. But athletes who have disregarded my advice on this have struggled mightily when it comes to improving their cycling, and they've had results in races that they're unhappy with. And that's not a coincidence. It's because they did not train as specifically as they could have or they should have on the bicycle. Get the indoor cycling trainer if you need to ride inside. Indoor cycling trainers can be called quote unquote dumb. It's not the industry term, but it's the colloquial term that people call it, meaning that they do not have any connected or electronic features. They're literally just mechanisms for you to ride that bike inside. It just allows you to attach your bike to this thing that allows you to spin the rear wheel and pedal the bike indoors. And then there's versions of indoor cycling trainers that are called smart trainers. And these do have connected features. They're electronic and they allow athletes to simulate the feeling of riding real courses while they're riding inside. Indoor cycling trainers can be wheel on, meaning that you leave your entire bike as is and attach it like that to the trainer, or direct drive, meaning that you take off the back wheel and you use a cassette that's on the trainer itself rather than your own wheel as part of the drivetrain. So when you're pedaling the pedals, you're spinning a cassette on the trainer itself. The style and the features of indoor cycling trainers determines their pricing. Indoor cycling trainers range in price from $300 to $1,200. The average amount that most athletes will spend on an indoor cycling trainer is around $500. Though quite frankly, this is kind of skyrocketing up because more and more athletes are going with the direct drive smart trainers such as the Wahoo Kicker, and that's usually at least $1,000 to $1,200 depending on if it's on sale or not. There are a few costs specifically associated with training for the run leg of a triathlon, and the two most notable are running shoes and running clothing. When it comes to training for the run portion of a triathlon, running shoes are the most important piece of gear that athletes will need. Most athletes will cover 600 to 1,000 miles in their training runs as they train for an Ironman, which means that they will need at least 3 pairs of running shoes in training, and possibly more. Neglecting to replace running shoes on time is one of the most common reasons that runners and triathletes sustain training-related injuries. On average, running shoes last for about 350 to 500 miles, and how long they last is just physics, folks. The shoes are absorbing 5 to 7 times the athlete's body weight when they're running, and so the heavier you are, the faster you're going to break down the shoe. I've talked about this before, that I'm 200 pounds. I break down shoes quickly because of my weight. My friends and athletes that I coach that are 110, 120 pounds, they get a lot more miles on their shoes than I can. And it's not because they're necessarily better athletes than me or anything like that. It's just physics. So the heavier you are, the more frequently you are going to have to replace your shoes. So just accept this reality and move forward. The average pair of running shoes costs about $150 right now, but the prices of running shoes can range from $120 to $300 depending on the shoe's features. I've seen time and time again how athletes are tempted to try and get the most miles out of their shoes, especially when the costs of training are so expensive. This being said, the risk of not replacing your shoes on time is real, and injuries do happen as a result of neglecting to do this on time. The cost of a pair of shoes relative to the entirety of the cost of training for an Ironman is actually quite small, so don't cheap out here. Track how many miles you have on your shoes via a platform such as Final Surge, Strava, or Garmin Connect, and replace your shoes on time when their life expectancy is up. The clothing you wear while you're running will make a significant impact on how comfortable you are and therefore on how much you will enjoy the experience. While yes, you can technically run in any clothing, you will absolutely have a better training experience if you run in garments that are moisture wicking, technical, and designed specifically for running. Common running items include tops, bottoms, socks, sports bras, and headgear. Depending on the season, you may also benefit from using items such as gloves, jackets, or sunglasses. The average price of common running clothing items is as follows. A running shirt is $60, running bottoms $90, running socks $17, a sports bra is $65, a running visor $30, gloves $20, a running jacket $100, non-prescription sunglasses $30. Races charge entry fees, and Ironman races definitely charge entry fees. As I've talked about in the past, entry fees reflect the costs that are incurred by the race organizers. They need to pass those along to the customer. That's you, the athlete. Triathlons in general are extremely expensive to put on because of their nature and of having 3 different sports. There are a lot of factors that make triathlon expensive. Insurance is a huge factor because of the water safety concerns. And also, quite frankly, providing water safety is expensive. Ironman races are even more expensive due to their scale, the level of organization, and the level of support that they provide to athletes on course. The current average price of an Ironman entry is $900. Travel is almost always required for Ironman events. While shorter triathlons might be more common locally and running events, especially shorter ones, are definitely common locally, there are not that many Ironman events. As of August 2024, there are just 42 Ironman events worldwide, and that is actually owned by the Ironman Group. There are more full-distance triathlons, but there are 42 Ironman events worldwide. For comparison, there are more than 800 marathons and thousands of half marathons held worldwide each year. As a result, the chances of having an Ironman race that you can sleep in your own bed to go to is exceptionally rare. To date, after more than 10 years of coaching Ironman athletes, I've only coached one athlete for whom this was true. And that actually just happened this year in 2024 when Melissa Witt, who lives in Lake Placid, trained for and raced Ironman Lake Placid. Obviously, travel costs can vary widely depending on many factors, including the destination, the accommodations, the method of travel, and more. Over the years, the athletes I've coached have spent an average of $4,000 on travel related to their Ironman race. So that's the number that I'm using for the purposes of this calculation. A triathlon kit, more commonly referred to as a tri-kit or a tri-suit, is a special type of apparel specifically designed to be worn for all 3 legs of a triathlon. It is constructed of fabrics that dry quickly, and it has a chamois to make riding a bicycle more comfortable, and it has pockets that can be used to store fuel or other items. A tri-kit makes it possible for an athlete to swim, bike, and run without having to change clothes in between each discipline. Pricing on tri-kits varies widely based on several factors, but it is a really worthwhile investment. It actually does make the process of transitioning from one leg to the next in a triathlon much easier. The average price for one tri-kit is approximately $230. A GPS device that is designed specifically for training for triathlons is a very worthwhile investment for athletes who are training for an Ironman. This device allows athletes to track their workouts, follow structured workouts, measure progress over time, follow turn-by-turn directions on courses during their workouts, and more. While it's technically not necessary to have a GPS device to train for an Ironman, I have observed that having one really enhances an athlete's experience in training, since the device can take over a lot of the thinking, calculating, and measuring that an athlete would otherwise have to do without one. And quite frankly, again, in the grand scheme of all other expenses associated with training for an Ironman, this one is relatively inexpensive. Plus, it gives a huge bang for its buck and a high ROI once an athlete is actually using it. There are cycling-specific computers that some athletes train with, including me, but for the athletes who are getting into the sport, I recommend a device that can track multiple sports, such as a Garmin Forerunner. Other devices, such as a cycling computer, can be acquired later on, in addition to a watch like a Garmin Forerunner if the athlete decides that they want to have them. But having a single device that can track all three disciplines, including a triathlon itself on race day, is the way to go if you're new or if funds are limited. The average price of a GPS device that can be used to train for all three disciplines of triathlon is $600. One of the most underappreciated and neglected aspects of triathlon training is hydration, despite the fact that managing hydration is one of the three most important things that endurance athletes can do to help their training and performance. Water is free if you get it from a municipal water supply, but there are costs associated with hydration vessels that enable you to carry water with you while you're training and with hydrating beverages, aka sports drinks. On the bike bottles are the most common way to hydrate. When it comes to the run, handhelds, weight belts, and running vests are the three most common types of running vessels that are used. The prices of these items varies widely, depending on many factors. Their capacity and how they are constructed are the main things that will drive their pricing. Bike bottles are usually around $20 each, and prices range from $30 to $200 for a running-specific hydration vessel. Handhelds tend to be the least expensive, and running vests are the most expensive. While this price range might seem broad and quite expensive, hydration vessels designed for running are definitely worth the investment. Dehydration impacts performance severely, and carrying regular bottles in your hands while you're running gets old very quickly. So again, having something that's really specifically designed for use while running is just going to make training easier, more comfortable, more enjoyable. My experience over the years has shown me that most athletes default to not carrying hydration with them during training, even if they know better and that they should be doing it. If we're lucky, they might carry a little bit, but it's often an insufficient amount to what they really actually need. Hydrating with plain water would absolutely be better than not hydrating at all. But plain water on its own does not replace the electrolytes that are lost during exercise. And so it's not truly a hydrating beverage for mid-workouts for athletes. I recommend consuming something that does actually hydrate the body during exercise. Something like Scratch Hydration, a sports drink, would be what I would recommend. Sports drinks, such as Scratch Hydration, are formulated to replace the electrolytes that are lost during exercise. They balance the osmolality in the body's gastrointestinal system, which helps with nutrient absorption during exercise, and they help the body to perform better in training and to recover after a training session. All of this means that the body adapts to and recovers from training better when it is sufficiently hydrated, and this leads to enhanced performance over time. Here it is, as simple as I can put it. If you neglect your hydration during your training, you will never reach your potential in endurance sports, and definitely not in an Ironman. It's too long. You just won't do it. In fact, dehydration could cause you to not finish the race if you don't get this right. You should be hydrating every single workout. Yes, every single one, even if they're only short workouts. Depending on your sweat rate, if you are properly hydrating all of your workouts, you will use an average of 12 servings of sports drink per week as you train for an Ironman, which means that you can expect to go through at least 624 servings of sports drink in a year. The cost for this number of servings is approximately $560. In addition to consuming hydration, athletes who are training for an Ironman need to be consuming fuel at regular intervals during workouts that last longer than 90 minutes. It's important to note that workout fueling is separate and distinct from an athlete's daily nutrition. Daily nutrition needs and requirements will increase alongside training. As an athlete's training volume rises, their need for nutritious food is also going to rise, and that means they'll consume more food, and that increased costs associated with daily nutrition. That being said, that cost is actually pretty hard to quantify. Workout fuel, however, can be quantified a bit easier. When it comes to workout fuel, athletes have so many options to choose from, and truly, right now, athletes have more options than they ever have before. Even in the last 5 to 6 years, there's been so many more things that have come out. Items such as bars, gels, waffles, Fuels chews are specifically made to be easy to consume while you're riding and while you're running. An athlete's pacing and the duration of your workouts in training will significantly impact how much workout fuel costs. In addition, which type of fuel an athlete chooses will also impact the total cost of their workout fuel in training. That being said, based on the average Ironman finish time, which is currently about 13 hours and 30 minutes, and on an average price per serving, the average cost of workout fuel for a year of Ironman training is $700. Almost every athlete who trains for Ironman follows a training plan or hires a coach. In fact, over 40% of the athletes who train for Ironmans decide to work with a coach versus following a training plan on their own. Both of these options have costs associated with them, and these costs will vary widely. There are a lot of different Ironman training plans available for athletes to purchase that are pre-written and ready to go, meaning that these plans are available for an athlete to start using right as they purchase them. Plans like these are specifically designed to help athletes train for the Ironman distance. They are often written and sold based on an athlete's experience level, such as beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and the type of metrics that an athlete wants to leverage during their training, such as effort, heart rate, power, or pace. Often, Ironman training plans are written with a specific race in mind. Race course profiles do change how athletes should be preparing and training. So for instance, an athlete who is training for Ironman Lake Placid, which has a lake swim and is a very hilly bike and run, will need to train a lot differently than an athlete who is training for Ironman Maryland, which has a river swim and a very flat bike and run course. Beyond these base elements, there isn't any individualization in these types of training plans. Ironman training plans are generic and they're not personalized for an individual athlete and their specific individualized goals. Because of this option is the cheapest way that athletes can get guidance from Ironman training, and the average price of Ironman training plans that cover a year of training is about $200. Custom-built Ironman training plans are designed, written, and personalized specifically for an individual athlete. Custom-built Ironman training plans account for so many things, including the athlete's goal race, the athlete's experience level, the athlete's training preferences, the athlete's goals, the athlete's personal schedule, the athlete's injury history, and more. A coach meets with an athlete to discuss their goals and what things they want accounted for in their custom-built Ironman training plan. Then, the custom-built Ironman training plan is written for and delivered to an athlete. Once they receive their custom-built Ironman training plan, the athlete goes and follows the custom-built Ironman training plan on their own. There isn't any feedback or guidance given to the athlete once the plan is written and delivered. Custom-built Ironman training plans are nice options for athletes who are self-motivated and who don't need or want to work with a coach on a daily or weekly basis, but who still want to have a customized training plan to follow to help them reach their goals. Because they are individualized for each athlete, custom-built Ironman training plans are more expensive than generic Ironman training plans. The average cost of a custom-built Ironman training plan that covers a year's worth of training is $1,300. Performance coaching is the highest level of coaching, communication, and personalization that an athlete can get while training for an Ironman. All of the same things, the athlete's goal race, the athlete's experience level, the athlete's training preferences, the athlete's goals, the athlete's personal schedule, the athlete's injury history, and more, are taken into account for an athlete on performance coaching. But there's even more specificity and detail with this training option because athletes have unlimited communication with their coach throughout all of their training. Additionally, training is designed and written 1 week at a time versus several months at a time and can be adjusted on a very granular level, even daily, depending on how things are going in training and what things are actually going on in an athlete's life. Because this service has such a high level of personalization and communication, it is the most expensive coaching or training plan option that an athlete can select. The average cost of a year's worth of performance coaching is $3,100. As you can see, once you list out everything that you either need or that is very helpful to train for an Ironman, the costs add up and they add up quickly. Here's the total average amount you can expect to spend while training for an Ironman, broken down by category. For the swim, a bathing suit is $60, a swim cap, $15, goggles, $25, a wetsuit, $400, a swim safety buoy, $40. For the bike, a bicycle is $3,000, a helmet, $100, a bike pump, $40, flat repair supplies, $60, bicycle maintenance, $300, a bike fit, $200, cycling shoes, $300, clipless pedals, $100, cycling clothing, $497, an indoor cycling trainer, $500. For the running shoes, total cost will be $450, and running clothing, just one outfit, $412. And then there's everything else. The race entry, $900. Race travel, $4,000. Tri-kit, $230. A GPS device, $600. Hydration vessels, $140. Hydration beverages, $560. Workout fuel, $700. Coaching and training plans, a range of $200 to $3,100 with an average of $1,300. The total average middle-of-the-road cost to train for an Ironman is $14,929, basically $15,000. The low average cost to train for an Ironman, taking out some of the more expensive items and going with the lower range on some of those line items, is still $12,800. If you get an expensive bike, if you get the highest level of coaching, and you add in some of the more expensive things, the high average cost to train for an Ironman is $21,800. These calculations do represent averages, but it's been my experience that athletes often spend more than this. Between wanting extra gear, maybe wanting a power meter, maybe they want more than one outfit to train in, they need bike repairs and more, athletes end up incurring additional costs throughout their training that do cost money. Training for an Ironman is expensive. There just isn't any other way to say it. While it's absolutely a wonderful and worthwhile goal to set, it does cost a lot of money to pursue the goal of becoming an Ironman. And I think it's really important to have open and honest conversations about this reality. And quite frankly, the fact that it's this expensive is also one of the reasons that I encourage athletes to wait until they're several seasons into doing triathlons to do one, because you can acquire some of these things slowly over many years and then be in a better position to do an Ironman where you won't have to spend this amount of money at once or within a single year. So for instance, if you are 5 or 6 years into doing triathlons, you probably already have a lot of the things that you need, and you might just need to bump up some of your budget line items for workout fuel or hydration or something. By understanding and confronting the true costs of training for an Ironman ahead of time, not after, athletes can make informed, thoughtful choices both in their goal setting and throughout their training to help give them the highest probability of successfully crossing that finish line and becoming an Ironman. That was another episode of the Full Circle Podcast. Subscribe to the Full Circle Podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like what you listen to, please be sure to leave us a rating and review, as this goes a long way in helping us reach others. The thoughts and opinions expressed on the Full Circle Podcast are those of the individual. As always, we love to hear from you and we value your feedback. Please send us an email at podcast@fullcircleendurance.com or visit us at fullcircleendurance.com/podcast. To find training plans, see what other coaching services we offer, or to join our community, please visit fullcircleendurance.com. I'm Coach Laura Henry. Thanks for listening.